Okay, so it's gonna go live here in just a minute. Setting up your meeting for Facebook Live. And then we'll be good to go. Close out this. You're all set.
Okay. It is 1:30 and I think we'll get going. This is amazing. I think this is the first one that we've started on time. Welcome everybody that may be watching from home or in delayed viewing later on. I'm Steve Adams. Despite what it says at the bottom of your screen, I'm not Catherine Callahan, but I'm on the Hopkins School Board and also serve on the Legislative Action Coalition for Hopkins Public Schools. We're doing a series of candidate forums today. This is something that we do on a regular 2-year basis for Minnesota legislature elections. And we're glad to have you all here today. Just a little background on who we are. We're a group of both school board members and local citizens that advocate on behalf of the Hopkins School District and hopefully for school districts statewide, because we share a lot of concerns and issues with other school districts. But there's a picture of us. Lori, was that in your office or Cheryl?
No, it was Cheryl's office.
Right.
Because the picture in the background is Cheryl's.
Yeah, that was taken a couple of years ago at one of our meetings with legislators. Oh, and if anyone wants to join us at the Legislative Action Coalition, please go to our Facebook page or our website on the Hopkins School District website and get information about when we meet and how you can join. So we'd love to have you. This is our schedule for today. We're featuring Senate District 48 at this time. At 3 o'clock, we'll have Senate District 49 candidates. And at 4:30, wrap up with the State Senate District 46 candidates. So if you want to stick around for that, we'd love to have you. Here are some of the guidelines for constituent questions. We've invited constituents to share their concerns and questions with us. Just to let you know that the LAC does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. And the views expressed in this forum are those of candidates and not of the LAC or Hopkins School District. And the purpose of this forum is to offer an opportunity for voters to hear the candidates discuss education issues that will affect students and families in our school district and across Minnesota. Guidelines for candidates are that each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and 1 minute for an opening and 1 minute for a concluding statement. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question presented by the moderator. A timekeeper, not visible here, will have a running timer to keep track of the 2-minute countdown. The moderator, myself, reserves the right to utilize the mute feature if a candidate exceeds the time allotment. And candidates are going to be selected in a randomized order to answer presented questions. And so we've got the Google Randomator at work here. We'll have each candidate open with their 2-minute opening remarks, and we'll start with Lori Pryor.
All right, well, thank you, Steve. Thank you, all the members of the Legislative Action Coalition for hosting this event. Also, I want to say hello and thank you to my other panelists that are here today. It is good to see you. And even if we're not physically in the same room together, it's good to be with you. And then I want to also thank everybody that will be viewing this and participating in it, asking questions and helping us think about the issues. And I just want to emphasize that, that this topic, education, really is the highest, I think one of the highest issues, importance of issues in our district. And that's been that way for a long time now. And I gather that from talking to my constituents, going door to door, talking to the voters, calling people, and we talk about education all the time. So I think that it's very appropriate that we are elevating this topic with a special forum today. So I can give a little bit of background with myself. First of all, my kids are a product of the Hopkins schools. We started here 30 years ago, which, gosh, that seems like a long time, but when you're talking about your kids, it's like yesterday. So they're all graduates of Hopkins High School, and they all are still in the local area. And when I'm talking to people, going door to door, talking to people on the phone, education and the schools that their kids have gone to and that they went to really is a part of somebody's identity. So I appreciate the work and the excellence of this school district, as well as the other school districts that I serve. But as we talk about that too, I think we have to talk about what's happened recently and how the pandemic has really laid bare what is really important these days. And I think what we found out is even more than ever how aware we are that education is essential.
All right, thank you, Lori. Next up on the randomizer is Steve Swedzinski.
Thank you. Times were tough in Superior, Wisconsin in the 70s. So I hitchhiked to Minneapolis looking for opportunity. And I worked my way through the University of Minnesota, being the first in my family to graduate from college. And I got a job teaching American government at Eden Prairie High School, where I ended up teaching for over 30 years. I met my wife, Patty. We had 2 children that we raised in the community. And I spent those 30 years teaching my students the importance of participation and political efficacy and civic virtue and the common good. And in 2017, I was able to put those values into practice as your state senator. Those shared values happen when people get together, put partisan politics aside, and work together towards a shared vision. Every day as I walk into the Senate chambers, I'm reminded of these words that are carved in stone just over my right shoulder as I'm walking into the chambers. And these words are, next to freedom and justice. Next to freedom and justice is popular education, without which neither freedom or justice can be maintained. Those are important goals, but we only get there by living those values. I believe in the power of people working together for the common good. At its core, that's exactly what Hopkins LAC is all about. That's what public policy is all about. As elected officials, I think that our constituents are still depending on us to listen and be prepared and plan ahead and meet our commitments. We can meet the challenges of the 21st century and build a brighter future. Last February, Lori and I were working on things like civics and financial literacy and closing the opportunity gap and full service schools and school aid and lunch shaming and more school counselors. And then came a global pandemic and economic instability and natural disasters and social upheavals. And our students and our teachers and our parents are struggling. And we had 4 special sessions. And we went from handshakes and hugs to no mask, no service, and social distancing. And yet today, we the people are being tested. Our ancestors let's work together and leave this world a little bit better.
All right, thank you, Senator Swedzinski. And last but not least, Jeff Chang.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon. First, I also want to thank LAC for your efforts to make this forum happen smoothly and safely in the middle of this pandemic. And this is really very valuable work, and that's a true part of our working democracy in our community. And as a candidate, I have a unique background. I'm an immigrant. I'm a first-generation American citizen. In '97, I left China and came to the University of Minnesota for my graduate studies. And my wife also joined me later. Minnesota welcomed us and offered us best education, which we relied on to pursue many opportunities here. We fell in love with this country and Minnesota, and we decided to stay, and we never left. And we are Minnesotans. We have been raising our 2 boys in Eden Prairie for the last 14 years. As immigrants, our hard work is rewarded with many opportunities and a better life in this country. For us, American dream and the freedoms are real because we have lived it. And we believe America is the greatest country, and we can entrust our kids and grandkids' the future to it. I'm also so grateful for what we have been offered by America and Minnesota. So I want to pay it back with my service. I've been volunteering a lot in the community and serving on different boards of nonprofits. And now I'm running for state senate because I want to help keep American dream alive, keep our freedoms, our constitutional rights, and unlimited opportunities alive for younger generations in Minnesota. I believe education can change a life. That's my true experience. I want to help our district and our state keep offering the best education to every kid and motivate them to make the best use of it for a brilliant future. I have a master's degree in political science and business. I have over 20 years of combined experience in business and education sector. I'm now an independent education counselor working with high school kids and helping them become motivated and prepared for the exciting future beyond high school.
All right,
And
thank you,
also-
Jeff. Your
Oh,
time is
sorry.
expired.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I should mention that there was a fourth candidate who was invited to this forum, Eric Wessels, who was running for House. He did not respond to our request to participate, so that's why he is not here today. Tech support, I lost my randomizer. The format is that we submitted 3 questions to the candidates and so that they could prepare in advance for their answers. And I lost my randomizer here briefly, but being that there's only 3, I think I can wing it. The first question that we shared with our candidates was is actually a 2-part question, and both questions relate to the local control. And I'll read the question here for the public. Currently, school boards may not start the school year before Labor Day unless there are extenuating circumstances. Also, of all types of taxing authorities in Minnesota, including cities and counties, school districts, watershed districts, sports facilities, commissions, even the mosquito control district. School districts are the only taxing authority that is required to conduct a referendum in order to renew or to increase a property taxation rate. So the 2 questions are, do you support locally elected school boards to set their own school calendar? Why or why not? And do you support allowing locally elected school boards to renew an existing referendum by a majority vote of the school board after a public hearing? And please give your reasons. And we'll start with Jeff Chang for this particular question.
Thank you, Steve. I believe local support is the greatest strength of our public school systems, and it gives the community the flexibility to address the needs specifically from their communities. So take the input from parents, community members, and other stakeholders in the community regarding these needs and challenges, and to achieve desired results is very important. And each school district would have their different demographics and different geographic location, different sites. So I support allowing our local school boards to set their own school calendar to fit their students' needs and goals by working with the families in the district. And the second part of the question, I understand, every time renewing existing operating levies, takes a lot of work and also costly. But the local control in our school district needs the input and approval from our voters, especially when it is about spending taxpayers' money. And I also think, this kind of a process is going to be a valuable way to engage the community to understand and support our school district's operation and goals. And at the same time, during this process, the voters and the taxpayers' perspective would be considered, in the public hearing and in the votes. So, I think, that's a big part of a working democracy at the school district level. So I would support the renewal after the public hearing with a majority vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Next up, Lori Pryor, your response.
Great. Thank you. So for both of these, my answer is going to be yes. And in fact, I've already supported those publicly because they have been considered we considered them in the House, and we took votes in the committee, and we took votes on the floor, and I was in support. So, so that's just to be clear about where I stand on this. And then I can give you my thinking behind it. And it's, as you kind of outlined and put out in the question, is when you're elected as a school board member, your election certificate has the same weight that mine does as a state representative. And as you point out, you have certain responsibilities and authorities, but it's being curtailed. And essentially your voters, what the voters gave you is being taken away. So to set a calendar, I mean, that is essential to figuring out your school year. It's an essential part of education. And then also to be able to levy the amount of taxes that you need to accomplish your educational mission. Again, that is an essential part of your job, and it's an essential part of what voters elected you to do. So I support the voters that put you in office, and I think that we should respect their wishes and give you the autonomy to do the job.
All right. Thank you, Lori. And next, Steve Swedzinski.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, there's this thing called federalism, and it's this balance between the federal government and the state governments. And the plan was that the state governments would be laboratories of democracy. And, the federal government would look to the 50 states and see what experimentation resulted in better policy. And I kind of look at state government and the school districts in a similar vein, that the schools are the experimenters of democracy, and with local control and the flexibility the state gives them, they can figure out what's best and when should school start times be, and what does the local community need. With respect to the school times, though, I kind of, I want kids to have summers off. I want them to go build forts in the woods and go biking around lakes and being kids. And with all the different school districts, we live in Eden Prairie School District, but a block to our west is Minnetonka and a block to our east is Hopkins. And for one little neighborhood to have 3 different school districts would be kind of a hassle for the local, the people that live in the neighborhood to have 3 different starting dates. So I'm kind of like Labor Day, after Labor Day is a great way to start school with respect to question 1, but opened the flexibility of the school districts. Question number 2, I agree with what Lori said. I mean, we elect school board members. It's expensive to run referendums. It costs taxpayers a lot of money, and the people have elected those local school boards to make these types of decisions, like on referendums. So I'm full on board with question number 2. And it reminds me of that old poster back when we were kids that said something like, I live for the day when the Department of Defense has to have a bake sale to buy a B-52 bomber, and local schools have all their financial needs met. That's what I'd like to see, is the schools not ever needing to ask for money because we take care of the schools and our kids.
All right, thank you, Steve. The next question relates to, special education and the current pandemic. And it is distance learning, and the changes made to educational delivery during the pandemic have been particularly hard for families with special needs and those students needing extra support. What are your plans for ensuring that schools are able to meet those needs? And for this question, we will start with Steve Swedzinski.
Thanks. Well, first of all, the schools have a financial or a federal mandate from the federal government and to take care of our kids with special needs. And everybody in this call is fully aware of that the federal government promised to give the schools 40% of their special education needs and financial responsibility. And the federal government's dropped the ball on that for decades. And right now they supply about 17%. And it's created this thing called the cross subsidy, which is over about $750 million in revenue that the federal government promised the state of Minnesota, like I said, decades ago, and they're just dropping the ball. And it costs my 3 school districts collectively around $20 million a year with a lack of the funding from the federal government. So with that said, schools support stability and security for our students. They come to school hoping that you know the parents and the adults in the school and the volunteers and the critical staff will help them become better citizens and better students. And right now, we've got some huge issues because of the COVID crisis. And we talked, you know, for Lori and I's 4 years about the achievement gap, the opportunity gap, the vulnerability gap, whatever you want to call it. And that gap has become crystal clear in this global epidemic that we've been facing now for 6 months. And we're realizing right now that we have been dropping the ball on so many of our kids, and in particular, our you know, pre-K population and those kids that have special needs. We're doing our best and the teachers are stepping up, and it's just, as every parent and every kid and every teacher I've talked to, our plates are full, and they're maybe going to get fuller in the coming weeks here. And we're just going to keep plowing ahead and doing our best.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Lori Pryor, your response, please, to this question.
All right. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Steve. Senator Sosinski, I appreciate how really you laid out that broader context behind that question and the deficit that the federal government is handing us in terms of funding for special education students and the special needs that they have. So it's, you know, again, this is something that was a problem before, and as so many things are happening right now because of the pandemic, what was a problem before is moving up to a crisis stage. And I realize that what our special education students are missing is something that's going to be, it's really challenging to replace. And what they're missing right now is that human connection that they're having. And I know the school districts are trying to find out any means that they can to maintain the adult caring presence in these students' lives. And so I really want to congratulate the people that are doing the work right now and salute them for the effort that they're putting into it. And I'm going to also say that there are no easy answers to this, and I don't even have a complicated answer to it. It's something that we need to keep engaged on. And as specific issues are arising, and you think that there's a solution for the legislature to be a partner with, then please bring it forward. And I know the governor's office and the Department of Education is interested in it. As your representative, you know, I will do what I can to advance meaningful solutions to this. And just know that we're open to knowing what the problems are. We're open to hearing possible solutions to the problems, and we're open to taking actions to make a difference for these students. So thank you for asking the question. And I wish I had something in my pocket that I could pull out that would make this all better, but I don't.
All right. Thank you, Lori. And finally, Jeff.
Thank you, Steve. Students with a special education needs is definitely a very important part of our student body. And to let them to learn together with other students. And it's a big, valuable, progress and important life experience for them to help them develop very important and necessary skills, including social skills that are crucial for their future. And this pandemic and distance learning have created a big challenge for this group of students and their parents, and we can't let them down. because it's very this a very vulnerable group in our community. And as a future senator, state senator, I want to work with our legislature at both the state level and also the federal level as a passionate advocate for special ed students and those who support them to secure adequate funding for their learning. And the federal funding is always inadequate. And it's been a big challenge for our state, and also our school districts have been under big pressure facing the big gap of funding that this problem creates, and they're struggling, especially in this pandemic. So when we have a commitment for vulnerable members of our community, and we will have to work together to find the solutions to fulfill this commitment. And I truly believe that it takes bipartisan efforts at both federal and also state level to make this happen. And definitely I want to be contributing to this efforts. And secondly, I want to see more actions. I want to see our legislature, our local school districts, and Department of Education create a special task force to evaluate the challenges and the barriers faced by those special ed students, families, and teachers, and to develop effective responses and resources to keep them healthy and safe along their learning, and give them continuous support in learning. So we should encourage those special task force at all different levels also share their best practice and discuss their effective ways to help those kind of students. I think that will be a very meaningful and practical actions.
Your time is expired. Thank you. Our third question we issued to each of the candidates has to do with the proposed constitutional amendment that was brought forth by former Justice Alan Page and Neil Kashkari, who's the executive director of the local Federal Reserve Bank. The proposed constitutional amendment was brought forth last spring regarding the state's obligation towards public schools. And it's designed to replace Article 13, Section 1, a part of the Minnesota State Constitution since 1857. This proposed amendment will likely resurface post-COVID-19. What's your opinion of the proposed changes to the current language in the Constitution, which does not include any provisions, the amendment does not include any provisions by taxation for funding Minnesota schools? And we'll start with Jeff on this one.
I think this proposed change also is a reflection of the shared frustration in our state. After many good faith attempts, a lot of investment to close our achievement gap for at least 2 decades, there have been no progress in our state. But I think now, instead of focusing on rewarding about public education, it's time for us to look at what has been done and have really an in-depth and even painful evaluation of the failures and find out why we have failed. And let's not repeat the failures again and again. I'm not sure how beautiful words will help us solve the problem, but I'm pretty sure that objective analysis and positive actions will help and will always help. On one hand, I would support continuous funding for our education in Minnesota after adjustments for inflation. But besides the funding going into the system and going into the technology, let's focus on the most important factor in education. I'm talking about teachers and our students in the classroom. And when students talk about their successful life-changing education experience, they're not going to talk about funding or technology. They're going to talk about the inspiring teachers. I'm always kind of like inspired by the legendary teacher, math teacher of Jaime Escalante. And he worked with the most difficult student body from 70% poverty families, 95% Hispanic and Black family, but he worked so hard and he inspired their students to make the best efforts and to be the, to become the best math class of AP calculus in the nation. I think, that's very inspirational, should give us some good thoughts and inspiration to help our students.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Next was Steve Swedzinski.
Well, this was the first part of the Minnesota State Constitution that I memorized years ago. The stability of a Republican form of government. The stability of a Republican form of government dependent upon the intelligence of the people. It is the duty of the state legislature to create a general and uniform system of public schools. And I just love that part of the Minnesota State Constitution, Article 13. I was so pumped up and excited when I met Kashkari and Page last January in my office. I was pumped. This is awesome, man. This debate we're about to have over the coming months about revolutionizing education. But I have to admit, I'm opposed to this amendment. I think one of the things it's doing is shirking our responsibility. Lori and I have a responsibility under this Constitution, under Article 13. It says the duty of the legislature. It's the only duty the legislature has to create a general and uniform system of public schools. And if we can't even do that, so this new amendment puts the responsibility upon the state. And I just think that shirks our responsibility. And the new amendment, I think, is going to result in more testing. I think we test anybody that knows me knows I believe that we're testing our kids to death. I think that's one of the reasons we have so many kids suffering from mental health, because they have so much standardized testing that they have to go through time and time again. So I'm not a fan of this amendment, but I love that we're discussing it and that the process has started. One of the things in this amendment I do like, though, is it says skills necessary to participate in a democracy and the financial literacy skill required to participate in this economy. To me, I wish that every Minnesotan agreed with those two skills of importance as we move forward. But I am not a fan of this amendment, but I love that these two people in Minnesota started the ball rolling and started talking about our schools and how we can get them better. But I think the constitutional clause that exists is good enough.
All right, thank you, Senator. And finally, Representative Pryor.
All right, thank you, Steve. And thank you, Steve, again. Because what you brought up is also how I remember the debate on the amendment. It was a great debate to be having, and it was the right time to have it, because we were at the beginning of the second year of the biennium of the session that was adjourned. And it was a good time to bring up this pressing issue. And the House of Representatives took on that challenge of debating not just this amendment as a solution to the disparities that we see in education in Minnesota, but also to look at a lot of other solutions and advances that we might be making and other opportunities. So we convened a full day session. And I was there for the full day, and I was sitting next to the Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, for the full day. And what that was saying is that we take this issue incredibly seriously. We were determined to not just put out pretty words about how to solve it, but we were determined to take action, and we were determined to fund the action that we needed to correct this disparity that we have in Minnesota in education. It was a great day. It was eye-opening what we heard from people about what the problem was. It was eye-opening about what we heard about the solutions. At that point, I was not as convinced that the constitutional amendment was a very direct way to solve this problem. And it just seemed to be something that, was going to be more like a court issue than actually an issue with correcting policy and funding programs that were going to make a difference. There were two things that I did hear, though, that were really encouraging and that I want to get back to and keep promoting. And one of them we have in Hopkins, which is the full service community schools. And I think that's a great program that has a big impact. The other thing that we heard about was the importance of early childhood.
All right. Thank you, Lori. We solicited from our viewing public questions that they might like to ask of the candidates. And we've got a number of them, but I'll just select a couple here for the candidates to respond to. And the first one is, and this has been fairly common over the last few years, is do you support vouchers, expanded tax credits, or other taxpayer subsidies for non-public schools? And if so, why? And or if not, why not? And Lori, we'll let you respond to that first.
So this is again something that I'm on record on because we did have proposals that came forward for extraordinarily generous tax credits for scholarships or for funding for non-public schools. And I voted against it just at a time to divert money from our public schools, which, as we've discussed before, because of the deficit from the federal government in special education, we are not fully funding our public schools right now. And so I just didn't see it in our budget to be able to fund private schools more than we are right now. So that part of it, it was a voucher under a different name. That was not something that I supported. But I do appreciate the partners that we have in our private education. And there's many, many ways that we do partner with private schools across the state, whether it's busing, other activities, extracurricular activities where there's a partnership, also with homeschooling. So I know that these choices that parents are making are very much right choices for their students. And I think that we need to continue and making sure that parents do have these choices for their own children's education. And I support the diversity of schools and school choices that we have in Minnesota.
All right. And now Jeff, would you like to respond?
Right. To this question, I personally, I support school choice and also the voucher program for both public school and private school, because I think, that's one part of the solution that will help our state to address achievement gap and to come back to, a racial disparity, because, that will give the students, especially from the disadvantaged community, for them more choices and better choices to find a fit and supportive educational environment to get a better quality education. So that's kind of my philosophy is, it's always appreciate the choices, especially that can create a big difference for our students and families in our state.
All right. And Senator Swedzinski.
Thanks. Well, I voted against this bill as well when it was on the when we discussed it, or I'm opposed to it as well. And there's two reasons why. Number one, Article 13, which was part of the last discussion that we talked about, goes on and further says that taxpayer funding of schools that promote a religious tenet can't be done. And so it clearly, if it's a religious institution, the state constitution prohibits it. And the other reason I'm against it is it further dilutes the money that goes into the public school system. You guys know in Hopkins, every year you're fighting tooth and nails to get more money from us, and to find out that the pie is smaller than originally started because we allowed for this equity and opportunity and educational tax cut, that's not okay. And the third reason, and maybe the biggest one on the horizon as we get back together in January, is we're facing what was $1.5 billion surplus just a matter of months ago is now going to perhaps be a $4 billion deficit. And anybody who starts talking about tax credits and reducing tax revenues for the state, I just don't see that happening. So this is some pretty interesting times we're heading into. But as I said at the beginning, when this question was first posed, I just can't see any reason why the state needs to adopt this plan.
All right, thank you. Another question that came in is, as learning has moved into digital classrooms, it is even more important that children are taught digital literacy skills. How will you ensure that students learn the skills necessary to be strong citizens, differentiate quality information from that which is unsubstantiated, and create for themselves a safe virtual world? And we'll go in order this time of Steve, Lori, and Jeff. So Steve Swedzinski, your response to this.
Yeah, that's well, all the questions have been great, but this is one people we're struggling with. I mean, all of you have heard the stories that broadband isn't sufficiently out there so that kids in Deer River and Pipestone are driving to McDonald's and Walmart parking lots to do their homework. Digital learning, it's funny because it's impacting everybody. The teachers right now that are teaching in hybrid systems have to prepare lessons every single day for in-class and for hybrid kids that are on remote learning. I mean, when I'm not trying to tell anybody my age, but distant learning when I was a kid was playing outside and going riding on your tricycle or something. That was distant learning. And today, distant learning's taken on a whole new meaning because of COVID. And so bottom line, kids need to be trained. My wife's a middle school teacher, and every day her kids are emailing her questions about where is this Zoom, where is the lesson for today, how do I get on the internet, and these are just questions the kids are struggling with, and the teachers are struggling with, and the tech people in our school districts are struggling with. This is a pretty big issue, and we've got to get it right. And I think one of the silver linings that's going to come out of COVID and this pandemic is we'll probably be more resourceful with hybrid learning, and maybe the cells and bells, so to speak, of our mortar educational institutions will use remote learning more, as long as every kid has access to a computer and every kid has access to the lesson plans that the teachers are preparing for them. That's paramount number one, and that the kids know how to use those tools. So we'll get it right because we're public schools. We always do.
All right, thank you, Steve. Lori, your response to the digital literacy question.
All right, thank you. So I am, even though my children now are all grown up, I'm kind of experiencing some of this through my grandkids right now and what their experience is with the digital learning. And there was a huge shift between last year when there was no time because the pandemic was on us and we had to move into the distance learning. We had those months of experience. Then we had the summer to think about what that experience meant, what was gained, what was lost. We had a couple of series of committee meetings about digital learning and distance learning that was very valuable. And then schools had a chance to come back and try to do it better this time, figuring out what the major problems were and tried to come up with better ways of delivering the education. And one thing that they found is that even if you're not physically present in the same room, you still there is this importance of being present at the same time and to be there, even if the space is Zoom, but to be in that space at the same time. So there are important lessons that we've already gained about digital learning. One thing to put it in listening to the question about safety and all of the things that are and social media and things like that. I think one thing that we can gain from this is that we're having to be quick learners right now as adults. I think people were doing this, our students, our young people were in the digital world, and we as adults were kind of on the outside. And we no longer have that option. We all have to be in that world right now. And so I think this gives us an opportunity to catch up to where our kids were heading and to be more thoughtful about that experience that they're having and what it means to our future.
All right, thank you. And Jeff, your response.
I really appreciated this question. I think, this really deserves a really thoughtful and in-depth and open discussion on this topic. I'm dad of two boys. They are 8th grader and a 10th grader in Prairie Public Schools. They're learning technology and they going through, this pandemic, staying at home, taking online classes. And I think one big lesson learned from how we handling pandemic in education field is digital technology is a great tool, but it cannot help us to accomplish all the education would help those kids to achieve. And technology will now help kids to every kid to learn and adjust effectively. Because each kids will have their own way and their own kind of a strength or weakness for them to learn effectively in education. So, and I'm a big supporter of the people factor in education. Because I believe technology will help us, but it will not provide role models for our kids. They will not provide learning about humanity for our kids. It will now teach our kids how to interact respectfully, friendly, and effectively with the people with the different thoughts and perspectives. So actually, I would like us to take a balanced approach. Continue our investment in digital technology, help our kids become useful and skillful, but at the same time, let's keep our investment in the people factor, help the kids have a more interactive opportunities with real people, with role models, with our leaders from business sector, from our community, and inspire them to learn and be an active participant in our society. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Our final question here, I think we've got time for, is regarding student assessment. And it says, schools have changed how they deliver education, but not how they assess students. What are your thoughts on changing how we measure student success? And this time we'll go in order of Lori, Steve, and Jeff. So Lori, your response.
So this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and it's not just related to what's happened now and the difficulty of assessing children's advancement with such little limited time for it, with all the pressure on our school day right now. So I think that we do need that more holistic approach to assessing kids, and not just that focus on going to a computer lab and sitting on a computer and hitting A, B, or C or D as the way to assess, the only assessment tool that we use for kids and the only kinds of measurements, but that there's other ways of assessing. And I think that is a discussion that we need to have at the legislature, and that's what we as public policy members need to be open to and to continue to work on. And it was, as I said before, it was something that we had started to talk about, and I was open to that discussion about better ways of measuring and assessing. And I think when this is, when we're back to, when we've got more things under lock and key, and we've kind of stabilized where we are as a state and in our education system, I think that this is one of the discussions that we need to have, and that we need to do it thoughtfully, and that we need to make it lasting.
All right, thank you. Steve.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I'm not a big fan of testing, and I do believe the kids need more choice of evaluations, and not just sitting down with a pen and pencil and filling out a bubble test. Lori mentioned the word holistic. I couldn't agree more. One of the bills I've been fighting for 4 years is a citizenship class, a civics class, and it's something I believe in. And sometimes people say, yeah, you know, the kids don't know how a bill becomes a law, and the kids don't know who their president is, and the kids don't know the difference between the Senate and the House. And I kind of always go, wait a minute, that's not what my bill is about. It's not about having the kids sit down after the course and taking a test. It's all about, do they know how to write a letter to their representative and their elected officials and how to properly address them? Do they know how to fill out a ballot? Do they know how to attend a civic meeting? Do they know all those things they need to do in order to be a better citizen? And no test in the world can measure that. It's all about actually doing and getting involved and trying to leave the world a better place. And so I like this word holistic. It makes sense to me. I just want to throw out this one statistic that I just think is horrible. 71% of our 18 to 22-year-olds are not qualified to serve in the US military. 71%. That's a horrible statistic, and it's probably not because they didn't do well on some test in high school. I think it's how you know, their diets and they don't they're in trouble with the law and other variables that begin with just raising, again, not to steal Lori's thunder here, but the word holistic, and we've lost track of that, and we need to get back to that holistic individual. And I'm not going to say we need to revolutionize our educational system, but maybe that's what we need to address is how is this class meeting the needs of the 21st century citizen?
All right, thank you. And Jeff, your response.
That's a great question. As I mentioned earlier, I think, you know, to help our state to close achievement gap, you know, one big factor is the people factor. And not only we need to support our teachers to let them do empowering and inspiring job with their students, we also need to put some higher expectation in terms of efforts for our students. Because education experience is a part of a life experience, and education and life, they are all demanding and challenging, and it takes the pressure, it takes you know, the capability to handle pressure and challenges and survive and succeed. And so I think we can take a balanced approach. We cannot totally give up, you know, assessment and standard testing, and we want to give our students some pressure and push them to work harder, to put in more efforts, to really learn and make accomplishments. I think, you know, that will be very helpful for them to truly learn some knowledge and also develop their important life skills to handle their future lives. And so that's my kind of a philosophy regarding our expectation on our students. And I also have international perspective because I know from my international work experience, I know exactly how our world has getting more and more competitive and how kids in other countries work really hard to get them ready for the future. And so that's just giving me a sense of urgency to help our kids to putting in more efforts and to really gain the skills and the strengths that are going to be important for their future, and to help us, you know, and help our country to still stay a leader in many different aspects in the future.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Well, I appreciate all of you, all three of you, for attending today. We'll give each of you a 1-minute opportunity to offer a concluding statement. So we'll start with Steve Swedzinski.
Thank you, everybody listening in and who may listen in at a further date. Thank you to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for willing to serve and willing to step up and willing to sacrifice. My service in the Senate and my campaign have been focused around certain core values. Among them are healthier and safer schools, stronger schools, fully funded schools, supporting our teachers and the critical staff that work alongside of our teachers, These times call for experimentation and renewal as we face our current and future challenges and build a brighter future for all. I am committed to serving the people of Minnesota with optimism, an open mind, and belief in the work that we can come together and find common ground for the common good. Our ancestors are wondering if we are willing to step up, and our descendants are wondering what kind of world we're going to leave them. So let's work together and leave this world a little bit better than we found it. And I ask for your vote by November 3rd. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Representative Pryor.
Thank you. So, I don't have to tell anybody this isn't news, but this is 2020 has been a challenging year. We've had the pandemic. We've had an exposure of racial injustice in Minnesota, and we keep talking about these disparities between our children of color and other students. And so we know that these are real challenges that we have right now. And the pandemic is just only shown how critical and these problems are and what our crisis is. But what we have to look for is when we come back, how we can come together again and how we can address these in a thoughtful, meaningful way that responds to this moment. And I am committed to doing that. And I know that I'm doing it because I'm listening to people and I am trying to represent the best in us. And I think that we can do it. So I ask for your vote. I ask for your hope.
All right, thank you. And finally, senatorial candidate Jeff Chang.
First, I really appreciated this opportunity, as I always appreciate thoughtful and constructive discussions within our community for any problem solving that we're faced. And I have a positive mindset. I always believe in hope. I have a vision that we can all work together to make Minnesota the best place to live, to work, to study, and to raise up a family and building up a business. So I'm a caring listener, thoughtful and a creative problem solver, and also effective cross-cultural communicator because of my immigrant background. I don't claim I know everything or all the right answers, but I have a strength to get connected with the people with a different background, different opinion, different expertise, and make them feel respected and comfortable to work together, to work on problem solving. I believe in the leadership to build common ground among people and find better solutions and create more opportunities together. So with all these background and strengths, I'm ready to serve our community and our state. I'm committed to building a better and stronger future for all Minnesotans, and I will always work hard toward that goal. Thank you so much, and I will appreciate your consideration and vote.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Well, I want to thank our candidates for attending and responding to the questions today. I again mentioned that Eric Wessels was invited to attend and did not respond. So thanks to all the viewers. If you have any questions about the Legislative Action Coalition, check out our Facebook page or our page on the Hopkins Schools website. So thanks to all three candidates, and good luck to you all.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks,
Steve.
Lori.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, LEC. Yeah.
And I really appreciate the hand model that just kept changing those pages and
Yeah, whoever
very
you are.
smooth,
That's
beautifully
Shannon
done.
Andreessen.
Is it Michelle?
Yeah.
Shannon. Shannon Andreessen.
Shannon did it. All right, nice. Well
Thank
done,
you, Shannon. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, take care. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.